hello. Wait, I forgot to clear chat first. That's kind of awkward. Well, let's just... Well, refresh chat. Well, that went well. Well, yo, welcome. Coming off the tail end of a Minecraft stream here. And, welcome to the PvZ tier list. Yes, every tier is ordered. And yes, I will explain Cactus in a second. So, Plants vs. Zombies, pretty much a solved game. 49 plants to take down all the zombies. And, well, each plant has their uses. And this tier list, of course, is organizing how effective I think they are, how vital they are to the game, yada yada yada. So, number 49, Hypno-Shroom. Hooray! So, how I define a plant's usefulness is in 3 ways. 1, do they have any specific niches that they excel at? 2, are they outclassed in any way? And 3, are they necessary to beat the game? Or to beat a certain thing? Hypno-Shroom is the most unfortunate plant on this list for multiple reasons. 1, it has no niche at all. The only thing you could argue is that it takes down football zombies in specifically 2-6 and 2-7. But that is it. That is literally the only niche it could possibly potentially have. And even then, you can do it for 50 sun cheaper with potato mine. So, it is a worse squash in most cases. If you actually hypnotize something, it's not like it's going to be super effective anyway because the wave density in this game is really small. So at most, you're going to hypnotize a football zombie and they're going to kill like 2 basics. It's not good. Hypno-Shroom is easily the worst plant on this list. And it is not close. But also accompanying Hypno in D tier is Blover. Why the heck is Blover in D tier, not in C tier? Why isn't Blover better than Cactus, I might hear you ask? Well, 2 things. 1, Blover is not necessary to be any level in the game. That is correct. It is necessary for 0 levels in the game. It is completely optional. Okay. So it may be optional. But, like, it's still better than Cactus, right? Optional or not? No, it's not. See, here's 2 things. Blover is a plant that is instant use, and it only affects fog and balloon zombies. Now, let me explain why Blover's outclassed in both its niches. First, as a counter to fog, it is completely outclassed by Plantern, which can do its job permanently for 25 or 50 sun. So, for taking out fog, Blover is completely outclassed. And in terms of countering balloon zombies, Cactus is a much better counter in most situations, and here's why. In fog levels, typically, you want to have a solid backline defense, but you aren't going to be able to afford something more expensive like repeaters. This is where Cactus comes in. It counters balloon zombies, it's relatively cheap and inexpensive, and it adds additional support. And it's also a 2-in-1 because instead of, running 2 separate slots for, say, Blover and Scardey in order to get the backliner and the balloon counter, you can run them both in Cactus. Blover only counters the balloon zombies and costs 100 sun each time you need to counter a wave of balloons. You can, if you're fast enough with killing zombies, you can stack up to 3 waves of balloon zombies. That's it. And that's only really possible in survival. And at that point, in most cases, unless you're on the roof specifically, it is completely outclassed in survival by Cattail. So, it is just a not It's not viable. Blover is not necessary, and it's not viable. Now, one thing Hypno has over Blover is that Hypno is required to beat the game because of Vase Breaker, which I forgot to mention in the Hypno one because I just remembered this. But it is required because of one specific Vase Breaker level. Blover is not required for anything. Like, if 4-10, you have Cactus. You don't need Blover. It does nothing otherwise. Survivals? Nope. You can just use Cactus or Cattail. It is not needed for anything. It also costs 100 Sun, which is really bad. You know, I'm just gonna, like, turn off chat because it's bugging me. It's bugging me that's, like, just from the other stream. So, it's just bugging me. Burb will just be floating there. So that Blover and Hypno are the only two plants in the game I would consider to be objectively bad. Alright, let's move on to Scardey-Shroom. Scardey-Shroom, bottom of C tier. C tier is for the okay plants. They aren't good, but they're serviceable. Oh, you're back? Well, I turned off chat because you're gonna have to chat again in order for it to show up. Yep, there. Okay, there you go. Anyway, you missed the explanations on Hypno and Blover. Basically, Hypno is no niche, Blover is outclassed, and they're bad. So, Scardey-Shroom. 25 Sun for a Peashooter at night sounds good in theory. But Scardey has a few weaknesses that kind of kill it. The first thing is that Scardey is a mushroom, which means it is unviable during day and is strictly outclassed by Peashooter, which is not a sentence you ever want to be true, but it is. So during the day, which is, you know, 3/5 of the game, 60%, that's not even true because most mini games take place during the day. Scardey is just unviable during that. Now, at night with Scardey, 25 Sun for a backliner sounds good, and it's okay. But then you realize that Puff-Shroom exists, and does not really need backliner support in any situation. Like, that Scardey-Shroom would help in anyway. 3 Puffs is enough to take down a Cone Head. That's basically all you need to know. By the time buckets arrive, you should have more of a defense. There's no reason that you really ever need to run Scardey, but it's an okay plant. If you want to chat MA, you can. The chat box is back on. Anyway, Jalapeno. Jalapeno being number 46. Why is Jalapeno so low? Well, here's the thing. Instant use plants are a pretty competitive market in this game. And since Cherry exists, since Doom-Shroom exists, since Ice-Shroom exists, Jalapeno doesn't really have a use, aside from specifically Zomboni countering. But Zombonis are better countered by other instants in most cases because you get more value out of it. Now, there's 2 specific cases where Jalapeno is actually useful, and that's, well, 3 actually, I just remembered one, but this is why it's in C tier and not lower, is that Jalapeno is very a niche counter to when a Gargantuar throws their imp at half health, it kills both the imp and the Gargantuar. So that's 1. 2 is in Bobsled Bonanza. Jalapeno is not required, but it is very helpful for the early game, because you want them to send more Zombonis than Bobsleds. And its 3rd niche is in Column Lycoseum, which it's just a board wipe. So, there's that. I used to play Plants vs. Zombies back in middle school. Yeah, Plants vs. Zombies was just the game back then. Alright, moving on to Cactus. Barely making bottom 5 at number 44 on our tier list. Cactus is just a worse Peashooter in almost every single way, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Because Cactus is extremely effective at countering balloon zombies, and it is a serviceable backliner in the fog. It is a lot better than Blover, because if you need to spend more than 600 sun to counter balloon zombies in roof levels, then Cactus is just straight up better. And that would be the equivalent of 725 in the fog. In the pool. So, like, 625 sun to counter balloon zombies in survival is not a big ask. Especially if they show up in more than one wave. Just having Cactus there, it's a big help. It's also, once again, a Peashooter, basically. Which means it can take down zombies relatively effectively. It costs a little bit much. And it doesn't really have a good niche outside of balloon zombies. But it is so effective at countering its niche, I can't call it bad. It does what it does effectively. Therefore, it's an okay plant. Sea-Shroom really hurts. Sea-Shroom really hurts. Because it had the potential to be one of the best plants in the game. But for some reason, they decided to stick like a 20-second recharge on it. Or 30. I don't remember. It's ridiculously long, though. Sea-Shroom already is extremely niche pick. Because you only use it in the fog. That's it. So, in 1 out of 5 areas, you use this plant. But the thing is that it's also a used slot. Fog already requires so many slots. It requires Puff-Shroom, it requires Sun-Shroom, it requires Plantern a lot of the time, it requires Lily Pad. I'm just going to ignore that one. Sea-Shroom is just unfortunate because it is already so packed in with all these other ones and it's unnecessary. You use it, but it never does anything. It's just there as a meat shield and then it dies. By the time zombies come in the water, you have lily pads, you have your defense. It's just... I get why it exists. To some extent, I get its recharge. But why? Why did it have to be like this? They could have made it like Scardey-Shroom, except in the water, and it doesn't get scared. Basically, they could have made it a Peashooter that is a mushroom and costs 25 is aquatic. MA, why you like this? Anyway, yeah, so Sea-Shroom, it's just the only niche I can think of Sea-Shroom actually legitimately having, aside from just being a meat shield or taking care of, like, literally only basics, is stopping dolphins by making them jump early. But that's about it. Otherwise, Sea-Shroom is pretty useless. And you use it, but it never does anything. Alright, time for my least favorite plant in the game, Threepeater. I already forgot where we are on the list. 43. Threepeater is number 43. Okay. So Threepeater is... I will get this out of the way. Threepeater is extremely good in challenge runs. It is extremely useful in challenge runs. It is great for getting the don't plant in the water achievements, and depending on the game version you play. And it is very effective when you have a lot of them. And it's a good space saver. But the problem with Threepeater is two things. One, it costs way too much. 325 is insane for what is 3 Peashooters. Especially in this game, where Melon costs 300, Repeater costs 200, and even the 3 Peashooters themselves only cost 100 each. Sure, you're sacrificing the 2 extra spaces, but space isn't a huge issue in this game compared to sun cost, I would say. Because Threepeater is not a late game plant like Repeater is. Threepeater is specifically used to cover multiple lanes in the early game. And since it costs so much, it is not effective at its job. It ends up not having a niche because it's just not as good. It's only good in challenge runs because it's able to hit multiple lanes as one plant in one spot. But other than that, it's pretty useless, I would say. But the plant itself is not terrible. It's okay. And it has its merits. But it's not higher than C tier. Number 43, I believe. 42? This is 42. Split Pea. Where do I begin with Split Pea? Okay, Split Pea is not a great counter to Diggers, but it is the best counter to them in the game, aside from Magnet. So, you kind of have to use it in a lot of situations, even though you don't want to. You could argue Gloom is a better counter to Digger, but that requires you to run 3 slots instead of just 1, unless you're already running Coffee Bean for something else. But at that point, you could just use Magnet. So, also, Gloom's recharge is abysmal. So, Split Pea is pretty much required for a couple things. No. Moorhead's the worst for Peashooters in this game. Split Pea... See, it's not a bad plant is the thing. It's still a Peashooter, which means it can still be backliner. You can still use it to counter Diggers. You just need 2 of them to do so, but it does so pretty effectively. Its stun cost is not outrageous. You can use the backwards head in order to snipe zombies. The problem with Split Pea is that outside of the Digger niche and maybe killing imps, it is not very good at doing anything special. Maybe you could plant it in the front lines to counter pole vaulters, but there's really not a huge niche for it. It's better than Threepeater just because you would actually use Split Pea in a casual playthrough. It's not required to beat the game, but it's very helpful. And most people would use Split Pea in order to counter Diggers. And it is the best Digger counter you get aside from Gloom or Cattail, but Cattail requires support to take down Diggers, and Gloom also requires support, while Split Pea can do it by itself pretty effectively. Next up, Gold Magnet. This one I originally had in B tier, but I moved Gold Magnet down for 2 reasons. One is that its recharge, like all upgrade plants, and this is a trend you'll see later in the list, is abysmal. Its recharge is awful. And second of all, is that you need Magnet in order to use it. You need base Magnet. If Gold Magnet was its own plant and cost 100 Sun and just picked up coins for you, it would be fine. But it's not. It requires Magnet-Shroom. So you have to use 2 slots on it, which is a huge problem for a lot of normal levels, I would say. In survival, it's less of a problem because you can edit your defense as you go, but in normal levels, Gold Magnet is not extremely viable unless you're specifically running a coin farm setup. A third thing about Gold Magnet that's a bit, like, less intrusive, I would say, is that it has the potential chance, if you only have 1, to miss coins. But it's a very specific window for those coins who have dropped in for it to miss them. And if you have 2 Gold Magnets, you never miss any coins at all. So, it's not a huge problem. But it gets C tier because it's okay. It just could be a lot better. Coffee Bean might be a surprise to be in C tier, because wouldn't making mushrooms be used elsewhere in the game super good? Like, taking a little cheat to look at S tier, 4 mushrooms are up there, and then you have 3 in A tier. Why is Coffee Bean in C tier? Wouldn't using mushrooms during the day be good? Yes and no. See, there's only, like, 9 mushroom plants in the game, and I would argue 4 or 5 of them are pretty not usable with Coffee Bean. You would not use Sun-Shroom, or Puff-Shroom, or Sea-Shroom, or Scardey-Shroom, or Hypno-Shroom with Coffee Bean. That's 5 mushrooms right there you would not use with Coffee Bean. So the only ones you'd use with it are Doom, Gloom, Fume, Ice, and Magnet. So those are the 5. Another thing is that Coffee Bean takes up an extra slot, which is a problem. But my biggest issue with Coffee Bean is its cost. 75 Sun is way too much. I think 50 is much more reasonable. I would not hate if it cost 25. It might be a little overpowered then, but 75 is just way too much. Spending 175 Sun on a single Magnet-Shroom is extremely expensive, especially compared to being able to spend 200 on a repeater. It just feels so much. It just does so... the value of Coffee Bean is strictly tied to the value you get from the mushrooms you use. And if you aren't running a lot of mushrooms in your setup, Coffee Bean ends up as a slot waster. So unless you're going to plant a lot of Magnet-Shrooms, then you're not going to need Coffee Bean. And even if you do plant a lot of mushrooms, which you need to in order to get your value from Coffee Bean, you're spending 75 extra Sun per mushroom because of the Coffee Bean. Alright, Tangle Kelp. This one's pretty short. Tangle Kelp is decent at what it does. It's a fair Sun cost. I wish its recharge was faster, but it just drags down a zombie in the water. It's only really bad. Well, yeah, it's only really bad because lack of recharge usage, and it's just outclassed directly by Squash, who is right next to it coincidentally. But, yeah. Poor Tangle Kelp. Squash. A lot of people would argue this should be at least B tier. I disagree for a couple reasons. One, Squash's hitbox is completely garbage, and its detection range is also garbage. So it's very inconsistent. If you know how to use it, it can be somewhat more consistent, but it ends up frustrating you a lot of time. And another thing about Squash is that it is directly outclassed by both Cherry and Potato. So there isn't really a reason to use Squash except to specifically maybe target either Gargantuars or Zombonis, but that's not strictly necessary in most cases. You end up bringing Squash and not using it because it ends up as a panic button more than anything. But Cherry serves as just a better panic button because of its larger range and more consistent actual, like, usage. You also get it earlier, and Squash just ends up being a slot filler. It doesn't really do much. Lily Pad's in C tier, mostly because it's good at what it does, but it's not great. Its recharge kind of hurts it a little bit because you wish you could plant more lily pads faster. And then, like, it's okay. It's whatever. It's a lily pad. Moving on to B tier. You might be surprised to see Chomper here. Yeah. Hold up. 36. Chomper's 36. Wow, look at that. Chomper is our next plant, a beginning of B tier. B tier is the biggest tier for a reason. These plants are all just good. They aren't great. They aren't completely busted. They aren't bad. They're not okay. They're good. Chomper. It gets a lot of hate, but Chomper actually has a lot of interesting uses. It counters Zombonis hard for some reason. I don't know why. It's probably arguably the best football counter in Adventure. It is extremely useful. It has a fast recharge, so that really helps. If you have a lot of excess Sun, you can just dig up and spam Chompers. And it's also pretty great in the early game for taking care of those early buckets. Especially if you're splitting your potato mine between, two different zombies. Chomper's great at acting as a pseudo instant that can also swallow and be used again. So, it's good. It's not great, but it's good. It's also pretty essential for a couple levels. It's also very notably used in 5-5, which is the Bungie level. It's not strictly required to beat the game, I don't think. I might be overlooking something, but it is extremely useful in almost every level it appears in. And when you bring it, you end up finding yourself using it more often than you don't. Flower Pot's in B tier. The only reason this is higher than Lily Pad is because of the very niche pro tech where you plant your plants on top of flower pots in order to give them a little bit of extra health. As a meat shield, anyway. This is pretty useless in every single instance, but it is enough of a difference to separate Flower Pot from Lily Pad. Flower Pot's also strictly more essential, like basically because the entire roof needs them instead of just the pool lanes. So it feels like less of a wasted slot when you bring it. So there's that. Garlic. Garlic is okay, garlic, all honesty, is an amazing plant, but the problem is it just doesn't synergize with anything very well. The only plants it synergizes with are Gloom, Threepeater, and Starfruit. And Threepeater's not very good. So you'd use it with Starfruit or Gloom. But Starfruit does not strictly need garlic to work, and you need to specifically be using a Gloom walk strategy in order to use garlic. So it ends up really just being a niche pick that you only use if you're going for a specific strategy. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it's not amazing. Umbrella Leaf is a plant that counters Bungie's catapults completely. It just makes them not an issue. They just don't exist anymore. It nullifies them extremely hard. It's not even that expensive, actually. It's only 100 sun and covers a 3x3 area, which is pretty big, considering that you'd only need 6 Umbrella Leaves to cover the entire lawn. But the reason it's only in B tier is just because it's not really useful outside of that specific niche. It counters that niche perfectly. So Umbrella Leaf's just a well-designed plant. Perhaps a little bit too strong, but I think it's fine. In the same vein, we have Plantern right above it. The reason Plantern's higher than Umbrella Leaf, despite Umbrella Leaf being used more, is simply because I think Plantern is the better plant. Umbrella Leaf, yes, it counters more zombies, but Plantern costs so little and does so much by just clearing away that fog and making it completely visible, nullifying an entire gimmick of the fog area. It's such a big help, especially in strategies where you need to see the right side of the screen. And I would consider it near essential, where Umbrella Leaf is much less so, even though it is very useful. You also get Plantern very early in the fog, as opposed to Umbrella Leaf being later. And Plantern is more common than Umbrella Leaf, and specifically its Raining Seeds. I don't know why Umbrella Leaf is so rare in that game, but look it up, it is true. Then we have Walnut. Wall plants are not particularly amazing in this game, and there's one specific reason for that. Well, two specific reasons, I should say. One of them being a ladder, and the other being that zombie stacking is not great, because zombie chew speed is pretty good, so walls just aren't extremely effective compared to just having more offense. Also, it's strictly outclassed by Pumpkin, so yeah. But Walnut is pretty good as a plant. You can use it to block off things. It's great early game. Pairs with Chomper, which is fantastic. It has a pretty good synergy as well with Spikeweed, Spikerock, Gloom-Shroom. Works pretty nicely with Fume-Shroom as well. It's just a good plant. Having a wall is never a bad idea. So if you want to bring a wall, well, you bring Tall Nut, not Walnut, but we'll get to them. Cob Cannon. Cob Cannon's in B tier. It is pretty much essential for long-term survival endless. Yeah. You like using Walnut to buy time for Peashooter shoot zombies. That is fair. I would argue having more Peashooters is just better in most cases, but yes, using Walnuts is good. I forgot to mention Zabotany, which Walnut is actually pretty good in, but it is unfortunately strictly outclassed by Tall Nut in all like other instances, and even in Zombotany, it's pretty outclassed. So Cob Cannon. Cob Cannon would be a lot higher if, one, it was not so niche in terms of how you use it, and two, it was just a shorter recharge. See, Cob Cannon's like one of the best plants in the game in terms of like what it actually does, but is hindered so much by the fact that it's the only plant in the game that takes up 2 spaces. It needs Kernel-pult, which is an extra seed slot, and it costs a total of 700 sun. Having your repeated use Cherry Bomb is like really nice, but in order to get your value out of a Cob Cannon, you needed to use the Cob Cannon 5 times. And in most levels, you're not going to be able to do that. 1 row of sunflowers, couple rows of Peashooters, and set Walnut in front. You probably want two columns of sunflowers, but you know, as like the most basic setup in the game, yes. I'd also put your sunflowers in front of your Peashooters, but that's just me. Right next to Cob Cannon, very coincidentally, by the way, is Kernel-pult. Um, Kernel-pult is completely different from Cabbage. Anybody who says they are similar is wrong. Cabbage is an attacker. Kernel is a support. Kernel's job as a support plant is to basically stall the zombies by flinging butter. But that means Kernel-pult is only good 25% of the time, because the other 75% is flinging kernels that, due to its firing rate, basically means it's half a Peashooter. If Kernel-pult is not flinging butter, it is one of the worst plants in the game. It is arguably deserving of D tier if it did not fling butter. And even then, it is so inconsistent, I could not put it any higher than B tier. Its cost is somewhat fair. I wish that it was a little bit more consistent in its butter, perhaps on a set pattern rather than being complete RNG, but for what it is decent enough. And if you spam Kernel-pults, you'll almost always get a butter, so it's great for taking out single targets like Gargantuars, even though it does not affect Zombonis. So keep that in mind. But there's not really an interaction you'll ever see anyway. Gravebuster's in B tier. Honestly, Gravebuster, the only reason it's in B tier is because it drops a coin. Otherwise, it'd probably be in C. But removing a grave is very important in nighttime levels because you need to free up that space, and you also don't want the zombies to spawn in the final wave. So Gravebuster is pretty essential for night levels, but it's also useless outside of night levels. I do want to shout out Whack-a-Zombie, though, because Gravebuster is pretty essential for that. And I would argue that without Gravebuster, that level, unless you have like godlike reflexes or an auto clicker, would be close to impossible to clear mowerless. So that's Gravebuster. Tallnut is just walnut, but it counters pole vaulters and dolphin riders, which makes it better. It has a lot more health as well, which they don't tell you. But Tallnut does have more health than Walnut. And although it costs 75 sun more and has a longer recharge, when you're using walls, sun cost is typically not a problem because the whole point of a wall plant is to stall the zombies. So you're going to be taking more time with your defense anyway. So you're going to have more time to generate sun. Which is why I would argue that Tallnut is actually better than Walnut in most cases. Because by the time you're using your wall plants, you're going to be already stalling for sun, and then you can just use them to stall even more. And then, well, your Tallnut is so much health that it'll probably live by the time you have enough sun to plant an attacker to also deal with that zombie and to kill it. It's also extremely... I don't know if this is 100% accurate or not, but I do believe that a Tallnut and a Peashooter can beat a Buckethead 2-on-1, whereas a Walnut and a Peashooter cannot. So, I don't know if that's true or not, but it is a lot closer than you'd think. Imitater is next. Imitator's in B tier. You might be wondering why it's not higher. Why is Imitator in B tier? Why is it only good? Well, the short of it is that Imitator, you don't really imitate much. Most of the time, there's maybe like 4 or 5 plants you imitate. Typically, you see Pumpkin, Ice-Shroom, Doom-Shroom, Cherry Bomb, Potato Mine, and then Puff-Shroom, maybe. And that's about it. You don't really see imitator versions of any other plants, and Imitator can also not imitate upgrade plants, which if it could, it would be much better. But it cannot, so it is not as good. That's pretty much the short of it, honestly. That Imitator, it's like, it's decent, but it just... yeah. Imitator's like the exact halfway point is right here, I believe, with Cherry Bomb as 25 on our list. The exact middle point for our tier list, Cherry Bomb. As stated before in the squash section, Cherry Bomb, good emergency option. It's great for taking out large groups of zombies, particularly during final waves. It can take out a lot of bucket heads for relatively cheap. It only costs 150, which, while it has a long recharge, is perfectly justified. And 150 as sun cost is completely just super good. My one complaint with Cherry is that typically if you have a good setup, you never bring Cherry because you already have the setup that can just deal with the zombies on its own. Like, maybe you bring it to help counter Gargantuars specifically, but other than that, you never really need Cherry Bomb for anything. It's great in Big Trouble Little Zombie, though. So, Peashooter and Cabbage-pult. So I put Cabbage-pult below Peashooter. You could change them if you want. I think Peashooter is strictly better solely because it is more necessary to beat the game. They both have their pros and cons. So Cabbage-pult counters snorkels, it counters screen doors, it's good against newspapers, it's good against ladders, and it's usable on the roof. Peashooter, on the other hand, is usable with Torchwood. It's used in a lot more minigames. It's used throughout more of the game in general. And it's also just got a better firing rate. So, in close quarter situations, Peashooter is strictly better than Cabbage-pult. I put Peashooter above solely just because you use it more. But they're both pretty good plants. I would even consider them slightly incomparable, mostly because Cabbage is more of a heavy attacker as opposed to Peashooter's light early game attacker. But that's just me. Rounding out B tier, a plant a lot of people that actually use it would probably be upset to see not an S, is Starfruit. Starfruit's like Kernel-pult, I think is the best way to put it, is that it is not great on its own, but it is fantastic when spammed. But the problem with Starfruit, it's better than Kernel-pult, but the problem with it is that Starfruit has a lot of trouble hitting specific spaces on the board, depending on where you plant it. It also cannot defend itself. It needs support in order to be defended, either from other Starfruits or from a backliner. It's also not a backliner. You have to plant it in the middle, which means you cannot shield it with sun producers, which is pretty bad, because Starfruit are 125 a pop, whereas a sunflower is 50. So if you lose a sunflower, then it would be a lot less than losing a Starfruit, which you're likely to do. Starfruit pairs very well with pumpkin and garlic, but it does not really pair well with many other plants, mostly because you need to dedicate a strategy specifically to Starfruit. So it's good, but you can't really use it with much else. You can maybe have one backliner, but Starfruit falls pretty quickly to a lot of zombies. It's good at countering Bungee, but it also loses to Digger a lot of the time, mostly because even though it can attack backwards, it attacking backwards is not really significant in most cases. It is slightly possible it could do something to Throne Imps or to Pole Vaulters, maybe. I don't know. I mean, Pole Vaulters would just be killed by the vertical shots anyway, so the backwards shot does not matter. Alright, A tier. Bottom of A tier, we have Marigold. Why is Marigold in A tier? Well, I bypassed this on the Imitater section, but Imitater plus Marigold, coin farming galore. Marigold is busted, but it's not actually a plant you use at all for defending your lawn. It is only good for coin farming, but it is so good at that job. I can't put it in S tier. I barely put it in A tier, but it's just so amazing at what it does. You can make so much money from Marigold. It does have a soft limit at the final wave, I believe, where it can only generate 3 coins at the final wave, but I don't think that's a huge issue. Mostly because you can generate so much money just from like playing through a level that the final wave does not matter. Marigold's slightly annoying because of its extremely long recharge, which I would rather have it cost a lot of sun rather than having a long recharge, but I see why they did it that way, just to make it more accessible to plant. But either way, Marigold is great at what it does. Alright, are you ready for me to talk a lot about upgrade plants in this tier? We're going to start with Gatling Pea, the worst upgrade plant in A tier. And, in my opinion, the third worst in the game. So, Gatling... Well, it's top 20, that's one thing. But I think the most important thing with Gatling is that when you're using it, you use it as a heavy attacker. You have to use it on top of Threepeater, which isn't typically a problem. Threepeater is one of the best plants in the game. You're going to be using it if you're not using Melon. So upgrading to Gatling Pea is basically a no-brainer. My problem, it doesn't even have to do with the sun cost. It has to do with the recharge and Gatling's viability compared to, or versus a lot of zombies. So Gatling is not good against ladder. It's not good against screen. It's hard countered by screen door, and it's not great against snorkel. really want to use it with Torchwood. If you're not using it with Torchwood, then it feels like a waste of a slot. And really, Gatling it's great. It is amazing. It is spectacular. But its recharge kills it, and it is countered by a lot of zombies. That doesn't mean I would say don't use it. That's not even to say it's bad. It's an A tier for a reason. But it is still a caliber below a lot of other plants solely because of its flaws. In the similar vein, Twin Sunflower. Twin Sunflower, once again, is killed by the recharge. Oh my god. Why do upgrade plants have to have such an awful recharge? So, Twin Sunflower. It basically acts as 2 sunflowers in one. I wish Twin Sunflower was better in this game, but it is really only specifically useful in challenges and in survival. Because in order for Twin Sunflower to make its cost back, it has to produce Sun 3 times, and then it needs to produce Sun a 4th time in order for you to make a profit. As opposed to Sunflower, which makes its cost back in 2 Sun, and it produces extra on the 3rd time. Not to mention, Twin Sunflower takes up an extra slot, once again. So you need to justify it actually existing, which means you need to plant a lot of them. And its sun cost is 150. Who thought that was a good idea? If it cost 100, that would be fine. But 150 is so much. Keep in mind, that is the cost of 4 sunflowers. You're spending the equivalent of 4 sunflowers on 2 sunflowers. Which isn't terrible, but it's still not great. Twin is like really good in survival. I would say like it would move up to S tier just in survival, but for normal gameplay purposes, in minigames, in normal levels, if it's not a 4 flagger, I would not bring Twin. I just don't think it's worth it in most cases. You could use the slot for something else. Doom-Shroom. Why is Doom-Shroom an A tier? I thought like Cherry was the best instant in the game or whatever. Like, Doom-Shroom just leaves the crater and is annoying and blah, blah, blah. Doom-Shroom costs 125 sun and does damage in, like, a 7x7 area or whatever. 5x5? Is it 5x5? I don't know. It's an insanely large area. It's not fair. I think it's 7x7, just because Doom-Shroom's a little bit busted. Doom is so insane when you use it well. It can just clear the board. It trivializes 2-10 single-handedly. Anytime you get Doom-Shroom for free, you use that thing, and you use it well. The crater isn't even that big of an issue, because you plant Doom-Shroom on the right side of the lawn. So, you're not going to be planting anything there except for Spikeweed and Spikerock. But, you know, Doom-Shroom just blows up, and if you're using instants, you typically aren't using Spikeweed or Spikerock anyway, so Doom-Shroom is just insane as a board wipe. It's viable in daytime. For 200 sun being like a 7x7 area, it's viable during the day, which is crazy. You'll notice that all the mushrooms are basically separated into 2 categories. Those viable during day, and those not. And then Sun-Shroom and Puff-Shroom, but we'll talk about them later. Doom is just the best instant in the game for actually dealing damage, and it's good at what it does. It's just really good. If you're going to bring an instant during nighttime, you bring Doom-Shroom every time. And during the day, if you're going to bring an instant in the late game, you bring Doom over Cherry every single time. Torchwood. Yeah, it's good. The splash damage is nice. The double damage is nice, but like, my problem with Torchwood is that it does not synergize with Winter or Snow Pea, which is the trade-off. And then it doesn't penetrate held items. And that's pretty big. Because the biggest problem with pea shooting plants was that they could not penetrate screen doors. Torchwood does not help with that. It does not alleviate that weakness. Yes, it does more damage to the screen door, but it does not fix that problem. So pea shooting plants are still fundamentally countered by screen door. Torchwood helps shred through basically everything short of like Gargantuars, and even Gargantuars take a big hit. Just Repeater Torchwood is one of the most consistent combos in the game. but I cannot put Torchwood any higher just because it doesn't help fix what the pea shooting plants have as a problem. You also get it during the pool, and since you don't use pea shooting plants during the fog, and you don't use them during the roof, well, it's not really useful during those points of the game, and you get it pretty late into Adventure, so it's not really useful during most of Adventure. So it's mostly just relegated to Survival and Last Stand, which is not a bad thing, but, you know, seeing as pea shooting plants are strictly outclassed by Melon, you probably wouldn't use Torchwood in a lot of cases unless you just want to use pea shooting plants for whatever reason, which I don't blame you for. Pea shooting plants are cool. Torchwood's great. I just wish it helped fix some of their weaknesses. It's better in this game than in PvZ 2 anyway. Magnet. Joy. Magnet is completely and utterly dominant in this game in terms of support. It is one of the best support plants, and it barely has to try. It costs 100 Sun, and it can nullify all-stars or football, whatever. It nullifies football zombies, it nullifies pogos, it nullifies screen doors, it nullifies buckets. It counters so many zombies in this game. Jack in the Box, Digger. So many zombies have metal objects in this game, and it just counters them so hard. It has no reason to counter so many of the specials, but it does, and it's fantastic. Even costing 175 during the day is not a deal breaker, because Magnet is just that powerful. You're willing to spend the extra 75 to use it. My problem with Magnet is, as I mentioned, it can take screen doors. It can also take trash cans. This is a double-edged sword. Screen door zombies and trash can zombies are some of the most spammed zombies in the game. So when they show up in droves. And if Magnet's busy taking screen doors, then they could be, you know, weak to all-stars or pogos or something else. Also, they have a weird interaction with Digger where they cause Digger to go left instead of right, which means that if Digger shows up and digs close to the house and then Magnet takes the pickaxe because you planted it, Digger will have like a huge head start to triggering your lawnmowers. So, you know, little niche interaction that isn't great, but Magnet is still A tier. It's still arguably the best support plant in the game, though I do have it as the 4th best support. But it's pretty good. Gloom. I've gone over to Gloom pretty much because of Garlic and Starfruit, but Gloom attacks in an area around it. It's a mushroom, so it needs Coffee Bean. It also needs Fume-Shroom. So this means that during the day it needs 3 slots, and during the nighttime it needs 2, which is, once again, a big problem. Its upgrade status is also a problem, because it means it has an insane recharge, and it can't be imitated. But despite all this, Gloom is still fantastic, and here's why. 1. Gloom is debatably the best Digger counter in the game when paired with Pumpkin. It shreds through them. It does so much damage. 2. Gloom can counter screen doors and ladders, and it just goes through them. I don't know why, but it does, and that's really useful. 3. Gloom-Shroom is an upgrade plant for one of the most useful plants in the game, which is Fume-Shroom. And just having that upgrade option, even though they do completely fundamentally different things, having the option to turn Fume-Shroom from a long-range plant into a close-range heavy hitter is never an unwelcome option. More options is always good. But the 4th and biggest thing with Gloom, and the reason it is so high, is because its cost is 150. To plant this thing during the day, which requires 3 different plants, it only costs 300 Sun. That is the same as a Melon-pult. And you get Gloom-Shroom. This thing hits like a truck. It shreds through most zombies. It is the best close-range plant in the game. It's fantastic whenever you use it. Why is it not in S tier? Well, for starters, you need 3 slots to use it during the day. Second of all, it's an upgrade plant. But I think the biggest problem with Gloom is also its biggest strength, and that is its range. A 3x3 area is very unique range, but it also means that it has trouble when not used to specifically counter certain zombies. If it's not being used to counter thrown imps or diggers, you're going to see it used in like Gloom walk strategies, or you're just gonna have it on the front lines and it's not gonna be doing much. It also really needs Pumpkin. Without Pumpkin, it's extremely vulnerable, and losing a Gloom, or any upgrade plant for that matter, is never a good feeling. But despite those hindrances, it is still fantastic. I don't even like Gloom that much. I don't use it that much, but I cannot deny that it is top 15 for sure. It deserves to be there. Spikeweed, a plant that a lot of people would dismiss in this game as not great. I think it's great. See, Spikeweed is this plant that you use on the right side of the lawn, and that is huge, because you never plant anything on the right side aside from instants, and those have like a long recharge, and you only really use as panic button options. Spikeweed, you just put it there, it counters so many stuff. It's so stupid. It counters so much stuff. And why does it instantly pop catapults and zombonis? It just instant kills them. They're gone. For 100 sun, you can just boom. Like, yeah, no, Squash is better, but like, Spikeweed doesn't have to be used as a counter to them. It just can be, and has a fast recharge, so it can be better than Squash if you have like an excessive amount of sun. Spikeweed also hard counters Screen Door. It just ignores it. It just goes right beneath it. It's great. Also does the same with Ladder. Spikeweed is great against something like Dancing. It is one of the only AoE plants in the game. Gloom doesn't matter as an AoE because it's too close range. Torchwood is AoE with the peas, but Spikeweed is so much different because it's AoE on that entire tile the entire time. Yes, you need Spikeweed, like 3 Spikeweed to kill a basic. Spikeweed's a support plant. It's not an attacker. It's not supposed to kill the basics for you. All it does is soften them up for your heavy hitters to kill them. And if you have 3 Spikeweeds, then no basics are getting through anyway, and you can just slap them down with your, your Repeaters, Melon-pults. Spikeweed also pairs fantastically with Snow Pea and Winter, which are 2 of the best plants in the game. And Spikeweed just benefits so much from them. With a single chill, it can shred through basics. It can deal massive damage to Coneheads. Spikeweed is even great at dealing chip damage to buckets. And being able to take out buckets without having to use Magnet is huge. It's not usable on the roof. It's not usable in the pool. And that really hurts it. That's why it's only A tier. But it is completely essential, I would say, for any long-standing defense, as long as there are no Gargantuars. It's countered by Gargantuars, but like everything's countered by Gargantuar. You need specific stuff to take down Gargantuars reliably, and well, we'll get to that. Cattail, yay, top 13. I really like Cattail. I mean, I have to in order to have made it the mascot of like my entire life, but yay, Cattail. Cattail has 3 specific things that it does better than any other plant. 1, it targets anywhere on the board. So it can just... Wow. Anyway, Cattail targets anywhere on the board. It can take out them from anywhere. If they're early game, it dominates. It is the best early game plant in the game. It has no competition. It's not even close. It's only 250 sun for that as well. Its cost is so fantastic. Its recharge is really bad, but typically you never really use more than 2 or 4 cattails, so you don't really need to spam them a lot like you would with, say, Gatling Pea, Twin, Wintermelon. You only really need 4. It can only be planted in the pool because it's an upgrade plant for Lily Pad. But I think it is the best upgrade in the game because Lily Pad is basically essential for pool levels anyway. So Cattail isn't even an extra slot. It doesn't even need an extra slot for you to bring something out of the way. Like, you know, for Gloom you need to bring Fume-Shroom. You don't need to do that with Cattail because you're bringing the Lily Pad anyway. You can just bring it without thinking about it. And then it counters balloon zombies and is the best balloon zombie counter in the game. I think balloon is one of the biggest threats, and having a plant that can target the entire board that not only does that but prioritizes the balloons over anything else and only costs 250 sun is so incredible. Cattail's not S tier for a couple reasons. One is the recharge again, but the other is that it can only be used in the pool and the fog, which really limits it. I wish it could be used more places, but, well, I guess Cactus had to get some use, huh? Cattail is just so fantastic. It shreds so many zombies. It's a great support plant. It just does so much for you. I could honestly talk about it like a lot more, but I won't. Wintermelon is not an S tier. It's at top of A. Why is Wintermelon not an S tier? Well, think about it this way. Melon-pult does all the damage. Melon-pult is the one that has the splash. It hits over everything. Melon-pult is the essence of what makes Wintermelon good. The only thing Wintermelon does, it is a 200 cost upgrade to add chill. It is completely fair for that. It's honestly kind of broken, but that's only really because Melon-pult's broken. Wintermelon's only really good because Melon's good. If Melon didn't have the splash, Winter wouldn't have the splash. Wintermelon is the upgrade plant that is strictly just an upgrade. It is not essential for Melon-pult to do anything. It's only there to really apply freeze, which it is the best plant in the game at doing. And chill is a busted debuff, don't get me wrong. But Winter is not strictly necessary, and its recharge really hurts it a lot as well. Also, the range of the splash being like a 1x3 is really awkward sometimes because it means that some zombies in the back can catch up to the front and reinforce the front line, so you can't really hit the backliners as much. Winter is still debatably the best attacking plant in the game and the best support in the game, but I would say it's A tier just because, like, if you're bringing Melon, you're bringing Winter, yes, but you don't need Winter at all. And if anything, bringing Winter just kind of counteracts or distracts from planting more melons, if anything. A lot of people would just be fine with one winter melon in each row, but really, in effect, having two melons would be much better. And winter melons recharge does not allow you to have two columns of winter melons. I'm sorry. Even in a 4 flag level, you're only going to get around 7 or 8 of these guys down, even with stalling tactics, because it's just... Wintermelon is the one upgrade plant that suffers the most, I think, from its recharge. Alright. S tier. The final 11. Ice-Shroom. The best instant in the game. Why the heck is Ice-Shroom the best instant in the game? What about Doom-Shroom? What about Cherry Bomb? No, it's Ice-Shroom. And here's why. 1. Ice-Shroom is AoE across the entire board and freezes all zombies with the sole exceptions of Pogo and Balloon. That is it. Every other zombie in the game gets frozen. I mean, except Zomboss, but... No, Zomboss gets frozen too. Even Zomboss gets frozen. Ice-Shroom is it is just a time stop without actually having to stop time. For 75 sun, or 150 on the ground, it's just, or 150 during the day, I should say. It is just stops the game for a full 7 seconds, chills for about 15, and it is a fantastic way to just say, wait a second. It's the best instant in the game, not because of, like, you know, how it does its job, which is freezing basically every zombie and chilling every zombie. I guess Zombonis are immune to it, but that's like the one exception. It's like, I think Ice-Shroom is the best debuffer in the game because specifically it is so useful in so many scenarios. Did you know that in the pool and the fog during the final wave, you can cancel the zombies rising out of the water with a well-timed Ice-Shroom? I don't know if you can do it with the gravestones and the bungees as well, but Ice-Shroom can cancel those ambushes. That's basically just using 3 Tangle Kelps at the same time, instantly. And it also buys time, because it freezes zombies off-screen. As long as the zombie's loaded in, it still freezes, no matter where on the lawn it is. And that's so amazing. It also chills, which is it's just a great debuff. It slows everything by 50%. It slows eating speeds. It allows your plants more time to attack. It allows your seeds more time to recharge. Ice-Shroom just does everything. And it is 75 sun at night, which is insane. 150 sun during the day is still super good. Like, instant plants in this game, compared to Ice-Shroom, like, look at Cherry Bomb, 150. Doom-Shroom, 200. Jalapeno, 125. Ice-Shroom affects the entire board. It's busted. It's stupid good. Alright. Let's talk about Spikerock, the best upgrade in the game, and this is the most controversial opinion on this list, I think. Except maybe Snow Pea, but we'll get to Snow Pea. Spikerock is the best upgrade plant in the game for 3 reasons. 1, it is not hindered by its recharge nearly as much as the other upgrades. Yes, it can be a problem. Spikerock would be this one right here. So, Spikerock. It is not as hindered as much by its recharge because Spikeweed as a plant doesn't really need to do a ton of damage. So Spikerock is strictly just an upgrade. It's not necessary. You don't need to ever bring Spikerock if you're doing Spikeweed strats, really. There's one exception to that, but I'll talk about that in a sec. The second thing is that Spikerock as a plant is extremely versatile, and you should always bring it if you can. Because Spikerock is super effective at countering basically everything. Where Spikeweed would die to a single Catapult or Zomboni, Spikerock can survive. It can pop 9 tires. It can be hit by a Gargantuar 9 times. I don't think you realize how insane that is. It completely nullifies Bobsled Bonanza. It completely shuts down Zombonis entirely. It stalls Gargantuars better than any other plant in the game, especially when paired with Chill. And it can almost one-shot basics. It's excellent against screen doors. It's great against coneheads. It just is such an amazing plant that it's almost a no-brainer. If you bring Spikeweed, you're almost always going to bring Spikerock just because the option is there and it does so much damage. It turns Spikeweed from a support into an attacker. Its versatility and how many zombies it can counter and where it's placed on the right side of the lawn. You're not planting anything else over there other than Spikeweed. And upgrading those Spikeweed for only 125 sun is that is so cheap. That is 225 sun for a Spikerock. Spikeweed is already super inexpensive, but Spikerock only being 25 sun more, basically the equivalent of 2 Spikeweeds and 25 sun, it can survive 9 I don't think you realize how important surviving 9 tires popping on it from Zombonis is. Because if there's not 9 Zombonis going in that lane, Spikerock lives the entire thing. It kills them all instantly. Zomboni is one of the biggest threats in the game, and Spikerock just hard counters it completely. So yeah, Spikerock's pretty good. The top 10. Number 9, Fume-Shroom. This one might be a little surprising because Fume-Shroom is not really talked about that much, but I think I want to bring up the topic of AoE in PvZ. Aside from Torchwood and Spikeweed, Fume-Shroom really doesn't have that much AoE competition. It is able to pierce held items. It can pierce hordes, hit dancing zombies through the backup dancers. It's extremely useful. It basically hard counters most zombies on the night where you get it. It only costs 75 sun, which is crazy, with a fast recharge. Has a good firing rate. It's pretty good against stuff like coneheads because it can hit the zombies behind them as well, especially when paired with Puff-Shroom, which is always going to be most of the time because you're using it at night. And even 150 sun for a Fume-Shroom during the day is not bad. If you're running something like a Repeater Torchwood setup, you might want to use Fume-Shroom with that because Fume-Shroom could just hit through those screen doors, so the Repeater Torchwood can just shred through the buckets. Fume-Shroom is just the best crowd control plant in the game, I would argue. You could say it's Spikerock or Spikeweed, but I think Fume-Shroom, for its low cost, its fast recharge, and its insane versatility, is just an overall amazing plant. Let's talk about Sun-Shroom. Now, I actually... I'm going to skip Sun-Shroom for now, because I want to bring it up later. Pumpkin. How did this plant get past testing, man? Pumpkin is, think of a walnut being planted on top of any plant, including tall nuts, by the way. But like Cattail, Gloom-Shroom, winter melon, like you wouldn't use it with Spikeweed, but like literally any other plant in the game. I guess it can't be planted on Sea-Shroom, but sure, whatever. It can't be planted on one plant. Pumpkin is so insanely good. It prevents so many threats. It just nullifies pole vaulters and dolphins. It nullifies thrown imps. It can stop diggers in their tracks. There's so many things that Pumpkin can do. And the thing is it buffs the health of every plant you place it on. So if you have like something in the front lines like a Chomper, you don't need to run Walnut with Chomper. Just put the Chomper in a Pumpkin. The Chomper just gets extended range that way. That's so stupid. Why is Pumpkin allowed to exist? Also, with the shovel mechanics in this game, you can shovel the pumpkin or you can shovel the plant inside the pumpkin. Its recharge is a little bit much, but typically one of the best things about pumpkin is you can imitate it, unlike the upgrade plants. So, despite it being like one of the only plants where I'd say its recharge is an issue, it's really not. Because you can just imitate it. And it only costs 125. So, that's like... That is crazy. You can defend any plant in the game with this thing. You can use it to set up potato mines. You can use it to stall out zombies so that, you know, your close attackers can do more damage. You can use it to counter certain zombies. It's just... It's really good and the best wall in the game by far. The most controversial opinion. Snow Pea. Nobody saw this coming. I don't think anybody, when making this tier list, would have put Snow Pea at number 6. Snow Pea is the 6th best plant in the game. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying Snow Pea is better than Wintermelon, better than Spikerock, better than Cattail, better than Pumpkin, better than Fume-Shroom, better than all of them. But why? Because Chill is busted. Snow Pea costs 175, it is a fast recharge, and it inflicts Chill whenever it hits a zombie. The only exceptions are specifically Zomboni, Screen Door, Ladder, when holding the ladder and Screen Door, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Oh, and Trash Can, but you never see Trash Can. It chills every other zombie in the game. It can make pogos extremely slow. It makes zombies take extra damage from things like Spikeweed and Spikerock. It buys extra time for your attackers. Snow Pea just does so much for you. And it does that for such a low sun cost. You could argue that Snow Pea's not great at hordes. But that's the thing. Is that Snow Pea stalls the big threats. So your attackers can take them down super fast. And then with the hordes, it can slow down the horde and make them advance at crawl. So your AoE plants can just shred through them. Snow Pea is, in my opinion, the best support in the game. Because it just makes so many dangerous zombies not dangerous. It makes so many bulky, big tanky zombies just not a threat. It's also extremely useful in so many minigames. So many levels. You get it extremely early. The Snow Pea is just extremely good. It's now just dawning on me that 4 of the plants you get during the first world are in S tier. But speaking of which, Repeater. Repeater's arguably the best attacker in the game. It has great firing rate. Fires 2 Ps at once. It's 2 Peashooters on the same spot. That's all it is, and that's all it has to be, because it does so much damage so quickly. 200 Sun fast recharge, that's great. 200 Sun is not super expensive for an attacker. Repeater is, you get it super early. If you can take down the big threats, it mows through the small ones. Conehead's not a problem. And basics just don't exist to it. If you pair this thing with Torchwood, it is shredding. It is just over. Now, Repeater is countered, once again, bring this up. Screen Door and Ladder. It's not a huge deal. It just, you use it for so much of the game. You use it for the first 4 worlds, and then you can't. You literally can't because of the roof. They literally had to nerf Repeater by making the roof a thing. But you can still use it if you plant it in column 5. And it's still viable. And it's great on the roof. I don't know why. I don't know why that's a thing. But you can use it there, and it works. I don't know. I don't understand it. Repeater, it just does so much damage. It does it super fast. It's the best attacker. Bar 1. Melon-pult. I've gushed about Melon-pult when I was talking about Wintermelon, but I think the damage on this thing is insane. 2 Melon-pults easily take down a Buckethead. 3 Melon-pults have a chance to take down a Zomboni. 4 Melon-pults, goodbye to your Gargantuars. I think that says it all. That's not even talking about the splash. The fact that you can upgrade it into Wintermelon. The fact that it's a fast recharge. The fact that it works on the roof. It counters screen doors. It counters snorkels. This plant is so good, and it only costs 300 sun. I don't understand how that happened. I genuinely do not. Okay, Potato Mine. If you've played Plants vs. Zombies, you know 2 things. 1 is that you always plant your sunflowers first thing, and you plant 2 columns of them. 2, Potato Mine is freaking busted. Okay, so my first time ever playing Plants vs. Zombies, I did not like Potato Mine. I didn't use it at all because I didn't understand what it did. How Potato Mine works is very simple. You place it down, you wait a few seconds, it pops up, and then a zombie walks onto it and explodes. It can instant kill Bucketheads, it can instant kill All-Stars, it can instant kill Zombonis. It does half the health of our Gargantuar. So recharge is not as nearly as slow as Cherry Bomb or Jalapeno. It costs 25 sun. You bring it in almost every single day level. No matter what. Bar none. Sure, you can use Peashooter or Cabbage-pult as an early game attacker, but in every single day level, you just bring Potato Mine anyway. You just bring it, and it counters everything. The only flaw with Potato Mine is that if there's 2 basics coming, you have to get a little creative, but like by that point, you have so much sun, you can just plant your attacker or your support. Potato Mine, it's one of the most insanely overpowered plants, and it was not nerfed in the second game. It is basically always picked, and it is always fantastic. Even during nighttime levels. When Puff-Shroom can't get the job done, 25 sun, boom. Potato Mine just blows away your football. It blows away your buckets. Potato Mine is just... It is the best... It is the best explosive in the game. With a little bit of foresight and planning, you can just dominate anything. Alright, Puff-Shroom. I'll keep Puff-Shroom pretty brief because I kind of want to talk more about Sunflower and it's getting late. So, Puff-Shroom costs 0 because that is completely fair and balanced. Has a fast recharge because that is completely fair and balanced. It can solo a basic, which is completely fair and balanced. 3 of them can 100% of the time beat a Conehead. That is fair and balanced. Puff-Shroom is essential for all nighttime levels. It can be used to stall when it's asleep. You can imitate it and just spam it. Every single nighttime level in the game, like with the exception of the fog levels, probably can be beaten with just Puff-Shrooms. I'm not kidding. It is that good. Everybody knows it. Every tier list you see will have Puff-Shroom as number 1 or number 2. and it's not contestable. But for the real number one, for the one we know is number one from the second this tier list started, is Sunflower, the sun producer. I also want to talk about number 8 real quick, the Sun-Shroom, because I skipped over a little bit. So, sun producers are the backbone of Plants vs. Zombies. The reason sun production is so essential is because most of these plants you would not be able to afford consistently without sun producers. You can do some strategies without them, but plants like Repeater, or Melon-pult, or Threepeater, Chomper, they just would not be viable without sun producers. Sun producers are so essential that you're required to bring one basically in every single level. Sunflower is the best plant in the game, bar none. It's not close at all. It is so near. It is not essential to beat the main adventure, but it's essential to beat the game. And I would argue it's the only plant that is truly essential to beat the game. You could argue Peashooter because you have to use it until you like get Cherry Bomb, Potato Mine, whatever. But like Sunflower is the only plant that's like really truly essential. And Sun-Shroom is just the nighttime version of Sunflower. It's literally what it is. If you're going on a night level, as long as it's not like survival, you're using Sun-Shroom. And combining Sun-Shroom and Sunflower at nighttime for survival, and then upgrading those Sunflowers later into twins, digging up the Sun-Shrooms, replacing them with Sunflowers, and upgrading them into twins, it's a viable strategy. It works. It's insanely good. I don't know why Sunflower is like so effective. It produces 25 sun every 24 seconds. That doesn't sound like a lot. Basically, in order to generate its own cost back, you need to spend nearly a minute waiting for it. But that doesn't matter, because Sunflower, it just, in the long term, in the long game, Sunflower gives so much return for your investment. It's just, it is always worth it to plant sunflowers. It's also an incredible meat shield. This is something, a little bit of expert tech. When planting your sun producers, most people plant them in the very back, but experienced players plant them in the middle to meat shield their attackers and supports, because those are more expensive and sunflowers are fast recharge and they're cheap. So you can just sacrifice the sunflowers to keep your attackers alive just a little bit longer so they can finish off those zombies. Or so the sunflowers can be bait for the pole vaulters or whatever. Sunflower just has so many uses, and they almost all link to Sun-Shroom as well, which is just the nighttime version of Sunflower for most cases. Sunflower is the best plant in the game. I don't think I need to say anything more. Anyway, that'll be all for this stream. Thank you for watching. This was a lot longer than I thought it would be. It's like 12:30 right now. I'm tired. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Cattail signing off.